Hi, everyone. I'm Mary Ellen Hammock, Executive Director for the SILA Foundation. And today we are delighted to be hearing from Kahea Stafford, Director of Operations for Encipher, a leader in surplus lines filing and reporting technology. Surplus lines is a reliably popular topic at SILA. We always have great attendance at our surplus lines fundamentals and our surplus lines advanced classes. And Encipher has been terrific by providing both instructors and support for these classes. And thank you. Kahea Stafford has worked in the financial and insurance industry for more than 15 years. She specializes in agency operations, workflow, and user perspectives when working with different teams. She loves understanding the complexity of state regulations and creating solutions that impact the insurance industry in a technology-focused way. When it comes to agency operations, nothing is a drain on resources like inefficient processes. This is especially true of surplus lines tax filing, where errors and missed deadlines equals penalties and fees. Today, Kahea will walk us through the industry's best practices for surplus lines management and tips and tricks for simplifying the surplus lines filing process. We have an hour, and although you are all on mute, we will take your questions through the chat, and we'll address what we can during the presentation and get to those at the end if time allows. Please let us know if you are having technical issues using chat, and we'll try to help you. It's been a crazy day with Zoom, so that wouldn't be surprising. And with that, I turn this program over to Kahea.
Well, thank you, Mary Ellen. I appreciate your introduction. Like she said, I'm Kahea Stafford. And so I'm excited to actually start this webinar with you guys and go over frictionless surplus lines filings, tips and tricks for creating workflows. And like Mary Ellen had provided, I've been in the industry for quite a while. I've worked with a lot of different agencies. I've worked in agencies, being able to identify some of the gaps, maybe some bottlenecks that they're experiencing. And I find that I address some of these areas or identify in a very unique way. And so with the experience that I've had and I've gathered together, I'm really hoping that what we're able to present today is something that you're going to be able to take with you and maybe implement within or create some ideas within your own organization to help you move forward, creating workflows that are streamlined, being able to identify and maybe focus on some areas that can help improve your processes within your own team's department, or even just the impact of the agency as a whole. So with that being said, we'll go ahead and start a presentation. So we do have some topics that we're going to cover today in our slides. One of them, obviously, I've talked about experience, but there's so much more involved in experience. And I think we'll get into that just a little bit more. The other aspect we're going to cover is the evolving world of agencies' operations, especially when it comes down to workflows. That's a heavy area that operations focuses on. And so we're going to talk about how it's evolved over time. The next thing we're going to talk about is just the different impacts, like because surplus lines specifically, it starts from the beginning and it tracks and goes and flows through so many multiple departments until it gets to the individual who's responsible for filing. And then of course, eventually to the state. And so we'll talk about the impacts of the different departments and certain things that can help improve processes potentially from the start all the way to the ending point, which is your filing piece. We're also going to talk about people. We're going to talk about leadership. We're going to talk about teams, areas or skill sets that can improve depending on what is available for you within your own organization and resources. And so we'll talk about that, and then creating and identifying solutions. And then of course, what are the solutions, right? What are the possibilities? What is available out there that you can utilize to help improve what you're doing internally so that you can file in a timely manner and efficient. So with that being said, let's go ahead and move on. Okay, so there are multiple ways that over time and over history, filings have occurred. And so I'm going to look at more in alignment with, you know, when I started getting into insurance, I actually came into it Now this is experience, right? I came into it as an entry level data entry assistant. And so during that time, and I'm going to age myself here, during that time, technology was definitely very new. Our computers were a lot larger than they currently are now with our laptops, and the systems were definitely clunky. We did a lot of paper. I mean, back then it was literally rooms and rooms of your files with your papers, and any policy that was being purchased, it went through, we print, we write everything out on the policy. We're getting applications that were written in, we're getting mailed policy documents, we're getting a lot of mail. And so as that came in, obviously we're entering into a computer, but ultimately we had our file cabinets, and that is where, in our filing systems, and that is where we would put our policy docs. It's evolved since then, right? From that point, computers started really taking a hold within, just the world, right? And so data entry started becoming a little bit more popular. States had also started, utilizing and leveraging technology as well. But on the other hand, most of them were requiring policies to be mailed to them. Then come into 2010, we're jumping, right? Spreadsheets, lots of spreadsheets. How do we keep track of things? Was through spreadsheets. How did we receive information? A lot of it was through email. And so through that, again, still paper filing. And then jump forward, we're into technology days, right? So 2020 really pushed us. It really challenged us. And I found that a lot of agencies were looking for technology solutions. But it's been interesting with the different interactions that I've had with multiple agencies across the board and different individuals within different departments, what their methods were. As I'd gone into some of these agencies and really helped and consulted on what their processes were, I found in some cases we were taking transactions, or we're taking documents, we were taking confirmations, we were printing them. We were adding some notes and we were scanning it back into the computer and placing it somewhere. And so I found even skill sets, right? Skill sets where technology maybe was not as comfortable for certain individuals. And so we were working off of limited skill sets. And so with this type of history and what we have been able to experience overall, I found myself in a position quite a bit, and I'm sure you have as well, where, we have surplus lines. It's fairly complicated. Every different state has different tax rates. They have different tax types. They have different, there's multiple policy types as well. So how do we figure out how to file? How do we figure out what we need to do for one type versus another type? So I have a quote here for us. How do we adhere to simplicity in the thick of terrible complexity? I pulled that from a Stephen Covey. He's his books are books that I love to reference anytime I'm working through leadership training, anytime that I'm, even within myself trying to identify what can I do to improve. I always like to reference him. So his quotes you're going to find are going to be in our presentation today. But how do we adhere to simplicity in the thick of terrible complexity? And I look at that and think, complexity, isn't that surplus lines? And simplicity, I don't really feel like simplicity could be applied in most cases when you're looking at the complexity of surplus lines. But that's where hopefully what I provide to you today will help you be able to maybe address this question as we move forward. So. All right, so we have multiple departments within an insurance agency. And obviously I'm providing you just general agency structure, right? So we have our sales, we have our brokers, we have our agents. Depending on what type of agency that you are, typically That's what we're working with, right? A broker, an agent. Then we have your account managers and your assistants who have different roles within an agency. Still, surplus lines impacts them as well. You have your insurance companies and your underwriters. Again, part of the process with surplus lines. You've got compliance and you have legal, making sure that we're adhering to the state statutes and regulations and the processes. And you've got licensing. Obviously, anybody writing surplus lines business is required to have a license, an active license to write within a state. So you've got licensing that impacts. You've got your surplus lines filer, whether they're a designated filer, maybe they hold a lot of different roles within your organization. Maybe they're the assistants as well. Maybe it's your account managers who are doing it. Maybe it's your compliance department and an individual within that. Varies, but there is your surplus lines filer. You've got systems administrators, and then you have accounting. Again, basic general structures of agencies, but in all of these different areas, any policy that has been purchased through surplus lines typically flows one way or another or impacts these different departments. So how do we bring a full scope of an agency and be able to see an impact in a way that we can help create a workflow that not only is just focused on the individual filer, but also help focus on the full stream that flows through a whole entire agency that impacts surplus lines. So, and again, today, my presentation is not only going to be me, right, talking. I love involvement. I love open questions, because this is where I believe in each one of these different departments, you have individuals that have multiple strengths, and being able to identify the strengths within those individuals really helps you be able to rely on some of those individuals with those strengths to help build out some of these workflows that can help improve what you have currently going on. So with all these departments, typical bottleneck is communication, right? Communication. And so communicating your agents or your brokers with your account managers and assistants, typically communication is occurring. But again, you have one aspect where their focus is solely on sales. Yes, there's definitely some items that have to occur within the sales process that impact everything that trickles down the line. But communication between your agents, your brokers, and your account managers become really key. Are they on the same page? Do they understand what the processes are between the sales department versus account management and assistance? Sales departments and insurance companies with account managers, there is a flow there as well. And communication, right? Are we receiving the documentation the way we're supposed to? Are we quoting? Are we looking at the policies and quoting according to the tax calculations for these surplus lines policies that are being purchased? Obviously, compliance and legal. Is compliance and legal, do we have a communication flow that is occurring across the board, especially in the areas that impact the multiple departments? I do find in a lot of cases with agencies that I have worked with where that communication may go to one department, but it may not go to another department that is impacted by the change. And so that's a bottleneck, communication, especially with changes that occur that happen frequently, that can create challenges within a workflow, can create challenges within efficiency, can create any data accuracy challenges as well. Then you've got licensing. With appointments, if you're an MGA appointments, there's aspects of even just writing it. Is your license, is your E&O, are all those aspects being followed up with? Do you have systems in place to be able to flag for your agency that maybe a producer license has been coming due, maybe an E&O, right? Every agency has their different processes. Every agency has the resources on varying levels. especially some of these newer agencies, being able to keep track of licensing, being able to keep track of compliance changes, being able to keep track of, the processes within an organization, your normal SOPs. All of these aspects comes down to a lot of the time communication. Then you have your system administrators. And I use that word lightly, right? Because systems administrators could be those who are responsible for your actual agency management system itself. Or though maybe system administrators are also the ones responsible for any type of importing or spreadsheet, right? Creation, depending on the agency. Then you've got your filer. Your filer is the one who obviously needs to review all transactions flowing through with surplus lines taxes. They're making sure they're that bottom line, right? They're the ones who, before it goes to the state, they have to know what they are responsible for doing within that state. They really, truly do need to understand and know what they need to do to move forward with filing. Then you've got accounting, and that's huge too. So let's go ahead and move forward. Seek, search, find. So for myself, as I've gone into different agencies, I ask questions. And right off the bat, this is where for you, do you have that question constantly in your mind of, do we have to do it this way? And so I find with those who come into organizations who initially ask that question is usually where you can start identifying bottlenecks, asking the questions. I have found quite a bit with different interactions with agencies where this is how I was trained. This is the process that I was trained to do. Maybe the process was putting everything on a spreadsheet, having different spreadsheets to be able to track compliance changes and effective dates. Maybe it's printing off certain documentation and putting it in a specific folder. Maybe it's, copy and paste for everything. Maybe it's mailing your transactions because that's how you were trained, even in today's agency environment. So how do we get to a point where we're asking these kinds of questions? Because workflows, they are what they are within an agency, but if we're not asking these kind of questions, we're not going to be able to help create improvements within a workflow. And then it's that communication. So do we have to do it this way? For me, anytime I'm looking at a process, that's the first question I ask. Do I have to? Without sacrificing exactly what our end goal is, do I have to do it this way? Or is there a better way to do it, right? Is it necessary? Is this process necessary for me to be able to move forward with the filing without sacrificing accuracy, without sacrificing the compliance regulated requirements on the state? Is it necessary? Is the step necessary? Why do we do it this way? Understanding, right? But how do you identify and understand for yourself why a process was put into place? Why do we do it this way? So being able to understand on a full level why it is that the process is the way it is. Is it because the state requires it to be done this way? Is it because this is just how we were trained? Is it because your compliance checks, states, and internal regulations within your agency says to help mitigate risk, this is what we're required to do, and this is what we're asking you to do? And again, is there a better way? I think for me, that one right there has helped create improvements on so many different levels by just asking that question. Is there a better way? And then, do I understand all moving parts? And I ask that because all moving parts means, do I understand the sales? Do I understand the account management and assistant piece? Do I understand the system administrator piece? Do I understand the compliance piece? Because again, Having that overall view of what's going on in different departments helps you be able to, with your piece of the pie, create impact, create change, have creativity towards what potentially could help improve your workflows and your processes. And then the other one is, what are my options, right? What are my options? Because as I asked the question of, is there a better way to do it? Are there options available out there that maybe I didn't realize are available in the market? Are there, if it's not software solutions, are there options internally, maybe within my own team unit, where maybe I could improve what we're currently doing based off of additional skill sets? What are my options? So this comes down to individual mindsets, right? This comes down to identifying individuals within your team who think this way, or maybe shifting your own mindset to thinking in this manner. Because again, it starts with team, right? It starts with you. And obviously, every agency, depending on the side, has different protocols that they have to go through in order to get to a point where maybe you can instill change within your organization. But identifying those within leadership roles who can make some of those decisions, and potentially having that comfort level to openly communicate or openly collaborate based off of ideas. That's where I come back to strengths, right? We all have different strengths that can help improve what we're currently doing. And then obviously understanding it is key. Understanding all the different trickle effect, whether it's the upline or the downline. That way, when you're making these decisions to move forward, you're making it without sacrificing an aspect that needs to be considered based off of some of the needs of other departments. In organizations, people usually perform one of the three essential roles: producer, manager, or leader. And each role is vital to the success of an organization. So I pulled that from Principle-Centered Leadership, Stephen Covey's book. It's great. But I like this because, of course, we're valuing each individual role within an organization. Producer. This doesn't refer to a producer like your broker or your agent producer. This refers to those who have active tasks to be able to move projects forward, or maybe those are the ones who are responsible for doing the filing. Maybe the producer would be also a manager, right? Who is pushing things forward, who is actively taking part in action within your organization. Then you have a leader. The leader, in my opinion, is critical. And each one of these roles are critical, but the leader is critical. Because although you could be a producer and you have these ideas and you want to be able to move forward, having direction is key in an organization, no matter what department you're in. And so those leaders are the ones that could also, if they have the mindset of, do we need to do it this way? Or maybe they understand that the markets are changing and they're assigning managers and they're assigning those maybe producers, right? The ones who are actively taking on tasks and moving forward. If they understand the goal, the vision of what you're trying to accomplish in an agency or within an organization as a whole, your leader will be able to help guide the direction your agency is going, help inspire, and also be able to recognize each role within an organization and that impact that they have. So I talk about this because people, right? The people part of an agency is so critical in being able to instill workflows that are frictionless, be able to instill workflows that flow properly and create efficiency. Creativity fosters ideas. So this is where we're going to get down to a little bit more of the nuts and bolts of creating frictionless workflows. Organization is everything. Being able to have a foundation within where you're going to organize your data is key, whether that means within your agency management system, or maybe you don't have a complex agency management system to rely on. If you're a new agency, maybe you're trying to create your own agency management system, proprietary software for you. Organization is key. Being able to understand exactly where certain aspects are going, whether that means your application that's coming in, whether that means where you're going to place the information, maybe the activities that are going on. All of it comes down to really clear organization and structure. Skills, Excel skills. I have found within multiple organizations and different individuals that I've worked with, Excel skills, especially if maybe the resources are not available to create technology solutions, Excel skills becomes huge in creating efficiencies within an organization. So first one, VLOOKUP. I can't tell you how many times I have been on different calls with different individuals and asked them, are you utilizing VLOOKUP? I mean, I know for myself, VLOOKUP was not easy for me to understand how to do initially before I started actively utilizing it. There are so many different programs out there to help with Excel skills. If that's not a skill set that you had gone into an organization with, maybe you haven't had full training on, there's a lot of YouTube videos as well that can help describe how to utilize VLOOKUP. What is so great about VLOOKUP is it helps you in a reconciliation process. It helps you with any aspect of reconciliation where you're able to do a comparison. This is one for even your filer. If your filer understands how to utilize VLOOKUP with your Excel skills, running transaction history reports off of the state websites or the stamping office's websites, and being able to compare that to reports that you can pull from your system or maybe the Excel document that you have, VLOOKUP is able to shoot out the errors and helps you not spend as much time line by line going through and trying to identify if an invoice reconciled from a state to what was filed or what was actually invoiced within your agency management system. It's quick. Concatenate. Are we familiar with concatenate? Because there's a lot of reports out there where in most agency management systems, your addresses are broken out between, city, state, address line 1, address line 2. And so a lot of these reports, in some cases, they want all of those items that are typically broken out within an agency management system pulled together. And so concatenate can create some efficiency gains within skill sets for a filer. Pivot tables. Pivot tables are great as well. Are you familiar with pivot tables? Is this foreign language, right? And I only say that because, again, you would be surprised how these skill sets can impact in such a great way, especially within organizations, again, who may not have the resources available to them to be able to invest in some technology-based solutions. And so having the ability in these skill sets to utilize some of the formulas that are available to you within Excel or within Google Sheets can help you be able to cut time, right, off of what you're currently doing and create efficiencies. SUMIF, it's pretty commonly used, but again, that's a great one. The biggest one for me is macros, building macros. That takes an additional skill set to build macros. But again, if you don't have a system where you can invest in technology or have the resources for that, building a macro is huge in creating efficiencies. So I'm going to give you an example here. When I came into an organization at one point, we were printing off all of the invoices. We were printing off transaction history reports, and we were running reports out of an agency management system and literally trying to reconcile all of them across the board, then putting it into a report format that's the state required and trying to just copy and paste. All of that took so much manual effort and time. And so what we found was scalability was really challenging for us to be able to see the types of resources and even know if we have the correct capacity to be able to handle the volume that was coming in. And so, hiring an individual who had really strong skill sets with building macros was huge. And in case you don't know what a macro is basically writing a formula, creating a process, and within an Excel or within Google, being able to record what formula you are building out. So if I have a spreadsheet and I want it to be placed in a format that the state has, and it's very specific to the state, well, I can record my whole process of creating the spreadsheet and templating it in the way that I need data to feed into the different columns based off of your state requirements, the reporting requirements, the template that the state requires. Being able to create a macro helps me take my data, download it, and then literally place it into this macro and run it to where it takes my current agency management report and it shoots all of my data into the format that the state requires it to be in. That is huge. And again, if you have individuals on your team or you're looking to hire somebody, that's a great skill set to create a frictionless workflow, right? Because as it comes down to your filer and your filer is now trying to consolidate all the data that needs to be included in a report, that's one easy way for you to be able to quickly have the report available to you and send it to the state. And if you're utilizing VLOOKUPs and you're utilizing different pivot tables and sums, all of these skill sets, if you don't have that technology side available to you currently or even now, this piece right here can help you be able to already cut down on the time spent creating these reports, as well as cut down on the resources you need in order to be able to handle the volume that's coming in. Some macros. Automation. There's a lot of automation available out there. Goodness gracious, especially in the environment that we live in right now, and technology is just exploding, especially in the insurance industry. We're starting to really welcome in technology solutions into insurance. We're starting to evolve to where we are relying on technology solutions. So much automation is available. There's bots who can literally look at your policy documents and retrieve information off of that and put it into templates that you need, or even input it into your agency management systems. There's automation to where, and different providers out there that create and pull maybe data from your agency management system and place it into affidavits, for instance, maybe place it into, your quotes basically that you're sending to insureds, or you're sending to agents for them to provide to insureds, for them to do their signatures and approvals. There's a lot of automation out there that can help cut down on the amount of time that is being spent, as well as help with accuracy. This is one piece, and we'll come back to automation as well, because automation helps with the sales process. Websites. Being able to submit for some type of policy that you're looking to get quotes on from a broker or an agent, being able to send a request for that, filling out your applications online, and automatically having that submitted over to, say, your brokers. And then there's a lot of different carriers too. If you're creating that API between your agency management system and a carrier, that also triggers and shoots over the application for them to do, their underwriting department to be able to do some of their quoting and determining what rate is going to be applied to that policy type or that transaction type. Automation, huge. This is going to cut down or potentially could cut down on how much time it's taking your sales individuals potentially to be able to get approval for sales. Automation can help with your invoicing. Automation can help with the review process. Automation, I mean, honestly, there's so many different solutions out there. I strongly believe automation is key in helping workflows be able to be streamlined through all departments. Then you've got standard training and evaluations. This is the part for me where management and leadership really come into play. This is a part as well that I've identified quite a bit in different organizations where most of the time they don't really have a lot of time that they can dedicate towards training or even quality control. But if you have an individual who is responsible for understanding or who does understand the full workflow from start to finish all the way down the line, which is something that I find myself doing in cases where I'm working with different agencies, understanding the full workflows and processes. This is where if you have individuals who do that and are able to be able to understand the skill sets that your team has, you're able to start creating standard operations procedures and workflows that benefit each department. And then you're starting to train those individuals on these processes and you're making them standard. I have gone into organizations where every broker does something different. Every account manager is trying to adjust to the different brokers. And because of that, the type of information coming in varies all across the board. I've seen organizations where the account managers and the assistants and accounting were really trying hard to come back around and, work through trying to standardize the processes. I have seen massive efficiency gains in standardization. And so because I'm operations and I love standards, this is one area I cannot stress enough that's going to help. But it takes an individual to understand the full workflow of what's currently going on within an organization to be able to identify the gaps, to be able to identify what areas need improvements and how do I make the decision, and working and collaborating with all the key stakeholders within all the different departments to collectively come together and create a workflow that works for each department. Evaluations, that's another key one. Your evaluations and doing quality control helps you be able to identify if there's an individual within a team who has strayed a little bit from your standard operations procedures. And no matter what organization size that you are, sometimes you're really large, right? And it's really challenging. Maybe you have multiple subsidiaries within your agency. Being able to create standardization is really hard when you have multiple agencies that you're managing. Completely understand that. But as the different workflows that you're working with all these different organizations flow through to your filing team, at some point, standardization needs to occur as it comes and hits your filing team. And so again, being able to identify and have somebody who that is their core responsibility, making sure that evaluations are occurring, whether that means once a month, whether that means once a quarter, whether that means once a year. Understanding that the importance of standardization helps with your workflows. They help with efficiencies as well and accuracy. This piece is, I'd say, huge within an organization. And a lot of the times that is the area that is lacking in most organizations, is having those evaluations occur, looking at the workflows, constantly asking the question, is there other options available to us? Can we pull in additional resources? Are we staying on our processes that we have put into place? because these are the processes that are most efficient within our organization. I did add API and batch filings. So there are states right now, as far as the ones that I've identified, there are 19 states out there that give you the capability of creating batch filings, or that can connect directly from your agency management system to theirs, where you literally, as long as the information is accurate and it's placed in a template, literally shoots your data over to the state and provides it to them, takes out manual errors, right? Sometimes, one, we're human, we make mistakes. And so using technology can help you prevent from having those manual data entry errors. Technology can also help you prevent, if depending on the tools that you're utilizing and the systems you're utilizing, can help prevent duplication, can help prevent scenarios where maybe you accidentally submitted a premium with an extra 0 attached to it, which then increased your tax liability. Batch filing. There are a lot of states out there, again, who you can create a batch filing. And again, in case you don't understand what a batch filing is, a batch filing is where you could run a report, like I had talked about creating macros. So you could run a report out of your system. The state has mapped fields that within the template and format that they require, whether it's an HTML language, a text file, whatever it needs to be based off of the state instructions, you can create a report that transmit the information in bulk, your transactions to the state. And they have the ability where you can log into the state site, file upload your batch to them, and depending on the state, they can accept 100 of transaction in one upload. In some cases, it's 10 transactions. In other cases, it's 5 transactions, depending on the state's capability. But those are options available to your team where, again, if you have individuals who are trying to work through solutions on this front, it can create efficiencies within your workflows. And that piece as well is slick. So when we talk about frictionless, it is frictionless. Now, don't get me wrong, sometimes batch templates are not created equally. So, well, most of the time they're not created equally. So knowing and understanding that there's an individual on your team who can troubleshoot that is really valuable. Okay. The start to finish process. So this is where simplified workflows, utilizing technology and strong leadership. So your sales, your brokers, and your producers. Automation can help with appointments, can help with licensing processes, and create your streamline, or it can help create streamlined processes around licensing and appointments. Applications now electronically submitted. If you're leveraging technology, this aspect can also help you be able to create a process within your organization where, one, you're creating accuracy, you're creating timeliness, and then automation reminders and follow-ups. There's so many different automation reminders and follow-ups depending on the systems that you utilize. And so leveraging these aspects within the sales and broker producer side of things. Automated documents that are completed, right? So when you're automating your affidavits, when you're automating your applications, when you're automating, this also tells you, and like for instance, and I'm not endorsing DocuSign, but what I'm saying is that's another ability. If a state allows signatures to be allowed through DocuSign that are digital within affidavits or whatnot, that's great, right? So creating automation, it's easy. A lot of this, and what we look for is ease. And as consumers as well as insureds, They want something that's easy. They want something that's quick for them. So in a sales process, that's huge. And then electronic payments that can be received. That's wonderful too. And so utilizing automation in the sales and broker producer piece is huge. Now we're looking at your account managers and your assistants, tax calculators. There are free tax calculators out there that are helping you be able to go through the quoting process and confirming that the quotes are calculated correctly, or being able to make sure that your fees, whatever they're applied to based off of the state, have them allocated correctly to the applicable area that is taxable for states or not taxable for states. There are on each state website, most of them have their tax calculators, but there's also additional tax calculators out there that have the different states already built for you to be able to see what those taxable rates are. So again, asking the question, is there any solutions out there that I can use? And I'll tell you now that there are, right? Or building tax calculators within your own organization. There's agency management systems where you're able to update the taxable rates based off of whatever changes that are occurring. And so using tax calculators help create efficiencies, especially if you're able to consolidate them into potentially one versus going to each state site. Again, options, right? There's lots of options out there. Limited follow-up. So if you're utilizing those automated features that are available in some technology solutions where they're doing the follow-ups, they're seeing maybe you didn't receive the policy in the timeliness that you need in order to file it with the state. There's a lot of different options within different software providers that can, or even proprietary software creation, where you can use the follow-up features where it's sending out reminder emails or even flagging yourself for follow-ups. But creating automation can help cut that down too. It can create and track policy documents that are received, invoice payments, whether they are received. And typically, if you're doing it electronically, it's coming through in a timely manner, and your reconciliation now is a lot more clean versus if you're spending the time receiving the check coming in the mail, tracking on an account manager level. Did my invoice get paid? Is it still on account? Before obviously issuing that policy. So, and in the world that we're in now, technology is huge. A lot of us are remote. I'm doing this presentation from home. So, and I'm sure a lot of you are working from home as well. So this is a piece, if you haven't created some type of electronic invoice and payment system, this is one that I'd say can help improve some of your workflows, can help improve some of your processes and create efficiencies, so that you can handle the volume that is coming in sales, so that maybe you don't necessarily need to expand your team because you've created more time for them to handle the volume of sales that is coming in. It becomes more scalable. And then of course, filer has the skills and training to file. I've placed filers here because account managers, depending on organizations, assistants sometimes are your filers. And so, that's huge. Okay. Review and refinement, like I had mentioned, having those quality control, constant evaluations of the market, SOPs that are clear, systems are being leveraged, leadership is working with teams on available improvements. These pieces right here need to constantly be put into place, whether you're doing those evaluations on a monthly, quarterly, semi-annual, or annual basis. That part right there can help you constantly have that mindset of, is there something else that we can do that can help improve? Now, I did see here, Lisa, that you asked questions for the batch uploads. How do you handle the upload of deck pages or affidavits? So depending on what your system capabilities are, and so depending on some states, they do require that to be uploaded to them. And depending on the tools that you're using, your systems that you're using, there are mappings that states provide, like basically it's a mapping key that their technology team provides to your guys' agency, or if you're using a third party, whatever it may be, they provide a map and a key of how to create these batches and submit the documents along with it. And so a lot of the times, if these states do require both, you're creating a file, a batch file that has your transaction data, and then you're creating a document file that matches basically line by line the transactions to the policy, whether that's your deck pages, whether that's your affidavits, within a separate doc file. And again, these states, once you put it together in the way that the state requires you to map the batch upload, then you're able to then take those two different files, combine them, and basically upload them on the state side. It's based off of state, right? So some states have that capability and other states don't. And so depending if the state has that available, and if you have a system that can create that, or if you're utilizing an organization or a third party or whatever it may be, system software, it's, what is available to them. It's basically whatever the state allows. It typically creates two separate files and then combines it and then uploads it to the state. Did that answer your question? Hopefully. And of course, if you guys have other questions too, feel free to ask. All right. And to conclude, timely filing is happy state, right? So savings and penalties occur if you can leverage technology. You don't have to worry about those penalties. You're able to actually file in a timely manner because you are using technology from the beginning stages with your sales all the way through each department into the filing's hand. Then scalability. This is going to help you be able to scale within your organization for projections that are occurring, volume that you anticipate coming in. Do I have the resources? Well, you would be able to determine that if you have created this because you created a workflow that you could consistently rely on. Clean and precise filing, data accuracy, filing accuracy. You get to a point where now maybe a tenuous relationship with the state or strenuous relationship with the state becomes a positive one. Because I tell you what, each one of these states, they want you to succeed. They want you to be able to file to them accurately. And so being able to utilize and leverage technology can take away some of that aspect where human error occurs. And then constantly looking at things for improvement, having those evaluations. And then, like I said, happy teams and happy states, that's really what we're looking for. And so hopefully the information I provided to you, I'm sure a lot of this is information you're familiar with, but leveraging technology, and being that my perspective is on a technology solution basis, there are so many options out there available for you to utilize. And so I would suggest, coming into it thinking and looking and evaluating or creating projects within your organization and determining, do I need to do it this way? Is it necessary? What is out there and available to you as an option to help improve? And having leadership, right, and management who that is a focus for them. So, okay, so that basically concludes my presentation.
I am not surprised you're so efficient with your presentation that you only had one question. You are very efficient, Kahea. We thank you very much for taking your time today to share this with us. Just a few housekeeping for everyone to let them know the webinar has been recorded. It'll be available on the website, SILA Foundation website, by a link in the next few weeks. If you're one who has attended some in the past, we're going to be catching those up as well soon. You'll also be receiving a post-webinar survey. Be sure to fill that and provide that out candid for us, because we use that feedback to provide these programs moving forward, and we want to make sure that we're meeting our needs. And of course, the SILA Foundation webinars are public and free of charge because we are funded by donations. So if you want to make a donation, or your corporation would like to make a donation or sponsor a webinar, just let me know. I'm M Hammack, HAMMACK at SILA.org. That's Mary Ellen Hammack. And I want to tell everybody thank you for attending, and have a wonderful day. And again, thank you, Kahea, for sharing your expertise with us, which is obvious.
Well, thank you. You guys have a great one.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.